The Great Pyramid's sides align to true north with near-perfect precision. This single fact unlocks a global mystery spanning thousands of years. Ancient builders across the world, from the jungles of Cambodia to the plains of England, performed a similar feat, locking their greatest monuments into a precise conversation with the sun, moon, and stars. They did this with simple tools and a profound understanding of the sky. By the end of this exploration, you will see these ancient sites not as silent ruins, but as sophisticated celestial machines. How did they achieve such accuracy without modern technology? And what cosmic secrets were they so desperate to set in stone? What does our drive to build in harmony with the heavens say about us, even today? That perfect alignment we see in the pyramids was never just an engineering flex. It was a declaration. For the people who built these wonders, the sky was not a distant, empty space. It was the ceiling of a living temple, a grand and intelligent engine of creation whose rhythms governed everything. Without electric lights or digital calendars, the cosmos was their only clock, their only map, their most direct line to the gods. The sun's journey marked the seasons for planting and harvest. The moon's phases dictated the timing of ceremonies. The steady turn of the stars provided a nightly reassurance of cosmic order. To watch the sky was not a hobby, it was a matter of survival and spiritual duty. This profound dependence gave rise to a powerful idea, what scholars call sacred geography. If the heavens were perfect and divine, then the most important places on earth, the temples and tombs meant to connect humanity to that divinity, should mirror that perfection. Think of it as building a permanent anchor point, a fixed location where the cosmic and the terrestrial could meet. Archaeoastronomer Dr. Giulio Magli describes these alignments as a kind of cosmological glue. By carefully orienting a monument to capture the first light of the summer solstice, or to frame the rising of a specific star, ancient architects were doing more than marking a date. They were stitching the human realm into the fabric of the cosmos itself. They believed that by replicating celestial order on the ground, they participated in maintaining the balance of the universe. This transforms every aligned stone from a simple building block into a profound philosophical statement. These sites are not just ruins, they are frozen conversations with the stars, a desperate and beautiful attempt to find our place in a vast, intelligent system. So the question shifts from how they built with such precision to why they felt they absolutely had to. What were they trying to say to the sky, and more importantly, what was the sky telling them in return? That cosmic conversation began with the most reliable partner humanity has ever known, the sun. Its daily arc and shifting horizon points offered a language anyone could learn, a celestial grammar written in light and shadow. To understand this, we must visit a grassy mound in Ireland older than Stonehenge, older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. This is Newgrange. For most of the year, its long, narrow passageway and inner chamber lie in profound darkness. But for a few days around the winter solstice, something miraculous happens. As the sun crests the horizon on the shortest day of the year, a slender beam of golden light pierces through a specially crafted opening above the entrance called a roof box. It travels down the 60-foot passage, finally flooding the central chamber with light for approximately 17 precious minutes. This is not an accident. This precise alignment has been performing its silent show for over 5,000 years. It is a deliberate, engineered moment, a guaranteed burst of warmth and light at the year's darkest point, likely symbolizing rebirth, the promise of the sun's return, and the triumph of life over the symbolic death of winter. This is the power of solar alignment, the first and most universal method ancient skywatchers used to lock their monuments to the cosmos. They focused on the sun's anchor points, the solstices and equinoxes. Think of the sun's path through the year as a pendulum swinging along the horizon. At the summer solstice, it rises at its farthest point north, reaches its highest noon arc, and sets far to the north. At the winter solstice, it does the opposite, rising and setting at its farthest southern point. The equinoxes in spring and autumn are the balanced moments in between, when day and night are of equal length and the sun rises due east and sets due west. These four events were the cornerstones of the ancient celestial calendar. The technique for capturing them was elegant in its simplicity, yet required immense patience. Builders would establish a fixed observation point, often a stone or a post. From that spot, they would watch the sunrise or sunset against the distant horizon, noting its position against a natural feature like a mountain notch or a distant tree. They would mark that spot, then return day after day, year after year, watching the sun's point of arrival slide along the horizon until it reached its extreme northern or southern limit, paused, and turned back. That turning point, the solstice, was their target. Once identified, they would build their monument's central axis, its doorway, or its primary corridor to frame that exact celestial event. We see this masterful solar engineering across the globe. In the Andes at Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, is a beautifully carved granite pillar. On the equinoxes, the sun stands almost directly above it, casting no shadow at all, a perfect demonstration of solar balance. In Egypt, the great temple of Ammon at Karnak is a sprawling complex whose main axis is aligned to the winter solstice sunset. During this time, the setting sun would shine directly down the lengthy columned hall, illuminating the inner sanctuary where the statue of the god resided, a literal infusion of divine solar energy into the heart of the temple. These were not just pretty light shows, they were functional, colossal calendars. They marked the new year, dictated the timing of planting and harvest, and scheduled essential religious festivals. This method required a sophisticated blend of empirical science and sacred geometry, turning observed celestial patterns into permanent architectural lines etched into the landscape. The sun was a universal, dependable clock, and by building these alignments, ancient societies did more than tell time. They harnessed it, weaving the very rhythm of the cosmos into the stone and soil of their homes. But if the sun was a steady, predictable clock, the moon was a mysterious and shifting oracle. Its path across the sky is not a simple back and forth like the sun's. Instead, it performs a slow, complex dance over an 18.6-year cycle. The points on the horizon where the moon rises and sets slide north and south each month, but the extremes of that slide, the farthest north and south it ever reaches, also change. Every 18.6 years, the moon reaches its maximum possible extremes, an event astronomers call a major lunar standstill. Roughly 9.3 years later, it settles into its minimum extremes, a minor standstill. Tracking this long, slow rhythm required a different kind of wisdom, one built not on seasons but on generations. Picture a dedicated skywatcher at a place like Chimney Rock in Colorado, a high mesa with two striking rock pillars framing the sky. For years, they note the full moon rising between those pillars each month. They see its rising point creep slightly further north or south with each cycle. They keep watching year after year until one evening, they witness the moonrise reach a limit it has not touched in nearly 2 decades, perfectly centered between the stone sentinels. That moment is a major lunar standstill. To encode that knowledge into architecture, to build a structure that frames that once-in-a-generation event, implies an astonishing continuity of observation. It means knowledge was carefully passed down from elder to apprentice for longer than many modern mortgages last, all to mark a celestial event whose pattern is subtle and slow. This is where the story of ancient astronomy deepens from practical calendar keeping into something resembling sacred science. A powerful example is found not in a famous mega monument, but in a quieter, older place. In the Scottish Highlands, there is a 5,000-year-old stone circle now called the Calendar Stone Circle. Its layout is not a perfect ring, but an arrangement that seems to map the Moon's complicated 18.6-year cycle. Researchers believe its stones act as foresights and backsights, creating alignments to the extreme rising and setting points of the Moon during both major and minor standstills. This is not about marking a monthly phase, it is about predicting a cosmic rhythm that unfolds across a human lifetime. Why would a culture invest such immense intellectual effort into tracking the Moon's most elusive movements? The answer lies in the Moon's ancient symbolism. Across countless cultures, the Moon was deeply tied to concepts of cyclical renewal, fertility, the hidden realm of the night, and often powerful feminine deities. Its rhythm closely mirrors biological cycles, linking it intuitively to growth, birth, and the unseen forces of life. By anchoring their sacred sites to the Moon's longest cycle, these builders were connecting their rituals and their understanding of time to a more profound, mythic timescale. It transformed their temples from annual solar calendars into monuments attuned to the grand, slow heartbeat of the cosmos itself. This method represents the pinnacle of pre-telescopic astronomy, a patient, generational project to weave the most subtle language of the night sky directly into the bones of the Earth. Yet beyond the sun and moon, the ancient sky held an even more profound promise: the fixed and eternal stars. In the deep, unpolluted darkness of the ancient world, these points of light did not wander or change their relative positions like planets. They were the permanent architecture of the night, a celestial map that wheeled overhead with clockwork precision. For cultures that watched them for centuries, certain stars became cosmic anchors, and aligning monuments to them was the ultimate act of faith in a timeless order. The most famous example takes us back to the Great Pyramid. Its sides are not just aligned to true north, they are aligned to the true north of its time. The builders did not have Polaris, our current pole star. Their North Star was a different beacon entirely, a star in the constellation Draco called Thuban. By carefully sighting on Thuban as it circled the celestial pole, Egyptian astronomers could establish a meridian line of astonishing accuracy, allowing them to orient the pyramid's massive base with an error of just a fraction of a degree. This was not a lucky guess, it was a deliberate targeting of a specific, slowly moving point in the heavens. But stellar alignments went far beyond simple orientation. They were used to mark time on a grand, agricultural, and ceremonial scale. Many cultures focused on a star's heliacal rising. This is the moment, after a period of being lost in the sun's glare, when a star first becomes visible again in the pre-dawn sky just before sunrise. This annual reappearance acted as a flawless, celestial alarm clock. For the ancient Egyptians, the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, was an event of supreme importance. It coincided almost perfectly with the annual flooding of the Nile River, the life-giving event that replenished the farmlands and ensured the kingdom's survival. By building temples with sightlines oriented to the spot where Sirius would first gleam above the horizon, they were physically linking their most sacred spaces to the promise of water, fertility, and renewal. This method, however, reveals the most mind-bending aspect of ancient stellar knowledge: their awareness of a cosmic process that unfolds over spans of time almost incomprehensible to a single human life. The Earth wobbles very slowly on its axis like a spinning top, a cycle called the Precession of the Equinoxes. This 26,000-year-long wobble gradually shifts the entire backdrop of the stars. The pole star changes, the constellations slowly drift. A temple perfectly aligned to a star's rising in the year 2500 before Common Era would be pointing at empty sky today. This means the builders were not just observing the sky of their own lifetime, they were calculating or perhaps inheriting knowledge of a sky that was perpetually in motion. They were building for a future they would never see, encoding alignments that would remain true for centuries, not just years. We find this long-term stellar thinking across the ancient world. At Chichen Itza, the unusual round tower known as El Caracol, or the Snail, is widely believed to have been an observatory. Its narrow, strategically placed windows seem to align with the extreme positions of Venus, a planet of immense symbolic importance to the Maya, associated with war and authority. Farther south, certain Maya temples are oriented to the rising of the Pleiades star cluster. To the Maya, this cluster was not just a group of stars, it was known as the rattlesnake's tail, or a group of celestial maidens, deeply woven into their creation stories and their calendar system. Aligning a pyramid to its light was a way of grounding their mythic history in the very stones of their city. This third method, the stellar alignment, represents the most ambitious reach of the ancient cosmological mind. It required patience across generations, a willingness to plan on a millennial scale, and a profound belief that human destiny was written in the slow, majestic turn of the fixed stars. In doing so, these architects did not just build monuments, they built bridges across time itself, connecting the fleeting moment of construction to an eternal, starry narrative. So the question inevitably arises, how did they do it without lasers or satellites? The answer dismantles a popular myth. There were no lost super technologies, no alien blueprints. The true marvel lies in the opposite direction, in the application of simple, elegant tools with extraordinary skill and deep, patient understanding. Picture an Egyptian surveyor at dawn, his toolkit not a box of gadgets, but a collection of profound ideas made physical. His most important instrument might be a gnomon, which is just a fancy word for a straight pole stuck vertically into the ground. By watching the shadow this pole casts over the course of a day, he could map the sun's entire arc. The shortest shadow at local noon points directly north-south. By marking the tip of the shadow at regular intervals, he could trace a perfect curve, a sundial etched into the earth itself. For the night sky, he might use a merkit. This ingenious Egyptian device, whose name means instrument of knowing, was essentially a plumb bob, a weighted string hanging from a palm leaf rib. By lining up the plumb line with a specific star through a sighting notch, an observer could track its meridian passage, allowing them to determine true north with stunning precision, the very method likely used to orient the pyramids. But the most sophisticated tool in their arsenal was the one they were born with, the human eye, trained through a lifetime of patient observation. This empirical knowledge was then translated into geometry using the simplest of materials, ropes and stakes. They knew that a triangle with sides in a 3-4-5 ratio always creates a perfect right angle. A stake, a length of knotted rope, and this knowledge allowed them to lay out the perfectly square bases of massive structures. To create a perfectly level foundation across acres of uneven ground, they used water. By digging a grid of shallow trenches, filling them with water, and using the uniform water level as a reference, they could ensure every cornerstone was set to the same exact plane. Reflective pools served a dual purpose, creating serene, sacred spaces while also providing a stable, mirrored surface to observe the wavering images of stars, simplifying the task of tracking their movements. This was not magic, it was brilliant, applied physics. Modern experiments have proven just how effective these methods were. Researcher Glenn Dash conducted a famous test using nothing but a simple rod. On the day of the autumn equinox, when the sun rises due east and sets due west, he planted a rod and marked the tip of its shadow at regular intervals throughout the day. The arc of those shadow points creates a nearly perfect east-west line. By bisecting the angle of that arc, he could establish a true north-south line with an error of only about 1/15th of a single degree. This rivals the accuracy of a modern theodolite. The message is clear: profound accuracy did not require mysterious devices. It stemmed from a deep, generational knowledge of natural cycles, married to meticulous technique and a relentless commitment to precision. These monuments stand not as proof of outside help, but as the ultimate testament to human ingenuity, patience, and our innate drive to measure, to understand, and to literally build our understanding into the world around us. That dedication to precision finds its ultimate expression on the windswept Giza Plateau. Here, around 2,550 years before the Common Era, the builders of the Great Pyramid achieved something that still defies easy explanation. Its base is oriented to true north with an error of only 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that in perspective, some analyses suggest it is more accurately aligned than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, a building constructed in the 17th century with far more advanced tools. This was not a happy accident. It was the result of a meticulously planned operation, likely guided by the pharaoh's master astronomers using those simple yet brilliant Merkit instruments. The probable method involved setting up two of these sighting devices in a straight line, perfectly aligned north-south. An observer would then watch a specific circumpolar star, one that never sets below the horizon as it crossed the meridian, the imaginary north-south line in the sky. By carefully noting when the star appeared in the notches of both aligned Merkits simultaneously, they could establish a perfect meridian line on the ground, a celestial blueprint from which every other measurement could begin. But the pyramid's cosmic conversation did not end with its orientation. Look inside to the mysterious shafts that emanate from the king's chamber. These narrow, claustrophobic corridors, sealed for millennia, are not ventilation shafts as once thought. They are precise sightlines to the heavens. The southern shafts point directly to where the belt stars of the constellation Orion would have been at their highest point in the sky during the pyramid's construction, and to the brilliant star Sirius. In Egyptian mythology, Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of rebirth and the afterlife, while Sirius was linked to Isis, his sister and wife. The northern shafts, meanwhile, target the pole star of that era, Theban, and another circumpolar star called Kochab, stars that eternally circled the never-setting northern sky, a realm of immortality. This creates a stunning architectural duality, the southern shafts connecting the pharaoh's resting place to the cyclical gods of death and rebirth, and the northern shafts linking him to the eternal, unchanging circumpolar realm. The cosmic blueprint may extend even further. Author Robert Bovell famously proposed that the layout of the three main Giza pyramids mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt, with the Nile River representing the Milky Way. While this specific correlation is heavily debated and dismissed by many mainstream Egyptologists, the broader idea is compelling. It suggests the entire plateau was conceived not as a random collection of tombs, but as a deliberate, scaled-down model of a specific part of the night sky. Whether a perfect map or a symbolic gesture, the intention is clear. The Giza complex was engineered as a permanent machine for transcendence. Every stone, every angle, every alignment was designed with one sacred purpose: to serve as an indestructible launchpad for the pharaoh's soul, guiding him through the celestial landscape to take his place among the imperishable stars. This was the pinnacle of sacred geography, where architecture became destiny, and stone was made to navigate the cosmos. The Great Pyramid's perfect angles speak of a culture obsessed with eternal order, but across the sea in ancient Britain, another monument whispers of a different cosmic relationship, one rooted in cyclical return and communal ritual. This is Stonehenge. Stand within its weathered stone circle at dawn on the summer solstice, and you witness a phenomenon that has drawn pilgrims for over 4,000 years. The sun crests the horizon, perfectly framed by the outlying heel stone, and a shaft of light pierces the monument's heart, illuminating the altar stone at its center. This is no accident of architecture. It is the culmination of a project that spanned more than 1,500 years, a slow, deliberate conversation between a culture and the sky that evolved with each new generation of builders. Stonehenge was not built in a single grand vision, but grew in phases, and each phase reveals a deepening astronomical understanding. The earliest version, constructed around 5,000 years ago, was not even made of stone. It was a circular earthwork ditch with a ring of 56 pits now known as the Aubrey holes. Researchers like archaeoastronomer Gerald Hawkins proposed a fascinating theory about these holes. They may have served as a primitive predictive computer for tracking the Moon's complex 18.6-year cycle. By moving markers, perhaps stones or posts, from hole to hole in a set pattern, it is possible the site's keepers could have anticipated lunar eclipses, those dramatic moments when the Earth's shadow consumes the Moon. This suggests that from its very inception, Stonehenge was a place for reading the more mysterious, long-term rhythms of the night sky. The monument we recognize today, with its towering sarsen stones and iconic trilithons, was erected centuries later. This final form masterfully combines multiple celestial alignments into one unified structure. The central horseshoe of giant trilithons and the outer sarsen circle are precisely arranged to frame not only the summer solstice sunrise over the heel stone, but also the winter solstice sunset in the opposite direction. Furthermore, the 4 station stones positioned around the periphery create sightlines to the extreme rising and setting points of the Moon during a major lunar standstill. This makes Stonehenge a multifunctional observatory, a single architectural machine capable of marking the Sun's annual anchor points and the Moon's generational extremes. Hawkins's idea of Stonehenge as a Neolithic computer, while simplified, captures a profound truth. Its layout is a physical algorithm, a set of fixed points in the landscape that, when observed from specific vantage points, yield predictable celestial information. You did not need a written manual, the stones themselves were the interface. This sophisticated design intent connects Stonehenge to a vast sacred landscape. Its solstitial axis does not exist in isolation. It forms a line across the terrain, linking to other Neolithic monuments like the Durrington Wall's Henge and the ancient avenue that leads to the River Avon. This suggests the people of prehistoric Britain saw the land itself as a canvas for cosmology, where pathways, earthworks, and stone circles were all part of a unified system mirroring the order above. Building such a system required a patience almost foreign to our modern world. It was a communal project that outlasted countless individual lives, a testament to a shared belief so powerful it compelled generations to haul 80-ton stones across miles of countryside. Stonehenge embodies the ultimate patient effort to build a permanent interface with the cosmos, transforming a windswept plain into a timeless clock, a calendar, and a temple under the open sky. That patient generational effort to build cosmic order finds perhaps its most complete expression not in the lonely plains of Europe, but in the dense jungles of Southeast Asia. Here in the 12th century, the Khmer Empire embarked on a project of staggering ambition to carve their entire understanding of the universe from stone and sand. This is Angkor Wat. At dawn on the spring equinox, a phenomenon occurs that reveals the temple's soul. The sun rises in perfect alignment with the central lotus tower, its rays illuminating the main gateway before flooding the long causeway that leads to the heart of the complex. For a brief moment, the entire architectural axis is set ablaze with golden light, a deliberate, engineered event that has repeated for nearly 900 years. But this solar alignment is just the surface of a far deeper mystery. Angkor Wat is not merely a temple aligned to the sun, it is a three-dimensional map of the Hindu cosmos. Its very layout is a sacred geography brought to life. The vast rectangular moat surrounding the complex represents the primordial cosmic ocean. The concentric rectangular galleries and walls symbolize the mountain ranges that ring the center of the universe. And the 5 iconic towers, with the tallest at the precise center, are the peaks of Mount Meru, the Axis Mundi, the home of the gods and the pivot point around which all creation turns. To walk from the outer moat toward the central sanctuary is to metaphorically journey from the outer edges of reality toward the divine core. This symbolic architecture is anchored in precise, measurable reality. The temple's westward orientation is highly unusual for a structure dedicated to Vishnu, who is typically associated with the east. Scholars suggest this orientation may link the temple to funerary beliefs, with the west symbolically connected to the realm of resting, tying the king's legacy to both solar cycles and spiritual transition. But the encoding goes even deeper than cardinal direction. Researchers taking meticulous measurements have discovered that the distances between key points in the temple's plan correspond to astonishing cosmological numbers. The lengths of certain causeways and galleries appear to reflect the durations of the 4 Hindu ages, or yugas, vast cycles of time spanning millions of years. Even more remarkably, the overall dimensions of the complex seem to encode numbers related to the precessional cycle, that 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis. This suggests the Khmer architects and astronomers were not just building for ritual in the present, they were embedding their understanding of cosmic time itself into the footprint of their greatest monument. Every step a visitor takes is across a scaled representation of epochal time. This intricate fusion of alignment, geometry, and symbolism represents the ultimate ambition of sacred architecture. Angkor Wat was not designed simply to point at the sky. It was built to be the sky and the entire universe beneath it. It used celestial alignment not just for ceremony, but as the foundational principle for manifesting an entire philosophical system in durable stone. Here, architecture transcends function to become cosmology itself, a permanent, walkable model of reality where every corridor, every tower, and every measurement whispers the same profound truth, that human order is a reflection of divine order, and to build is to participate in the very structure of existence. Yet this cosmic conversation was not conducted with lines alone. The ancient architects spoke a second, more subtle language, one of shape and proportion, a silent mathematics etched into stone. They understood that true harmony with the universe required more than pointing at the sky. It demanded embodying the very ratios that governed creation. This is the realm of sacred geometry, where numbers were not cold calculations but the living syntax of the divine. The most famous of these principles is the golden ratio, often represented by the Greek letter phi. This proportion, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears throughout the natural world, in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and even the proportions of the human body. To the ancient mind, this recurrence was not coincidence. It was evidence of a universal blueprint, a harmonic code that the cosmos used to build beauty and order. By incorporating this same ratio into their temples and tombs, builders believed they were infusing man-made structures with the innate perfection of nature itself. We see this intention in the Parthenon in Athens, where the facade's dimensions are said to closely follow the golden rectangle, creating a visual harmony that feels instinctively right, as if the temple grew from the hill rather than being placed upon it. But the use of sacred geometry went beyond aesthetic grace. It served as a functional, spiritual technology. Consider the simple 3-4-5 triangle, a principle understood long before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras gave it his name. This right-angled triangle, with sides in this precise ratio, was a practical surveying tool, allowing builders to create perfect square corners for massive foundations. Yet its significance was dual. It was also seen as a representation of cosmic harmony, the marriage of the earthly 3 and 4 with the divine hypotenuse of 5. This transforms a builder's trick into a ritual act, each perfectly squared corner a reaffirmation of cosmic order. The encoding grows even more profound within the Great Pyramid. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is very nearly 2 pi. That is, if you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 2 pi, you get a number extraordinarily close to the length of its base perimeter. This suggests the builders were intentionally incorporating the mathematical constant pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, into a square-based structure. Why would they do this? One compelling interpretation is that they were symbolically squaring the circle, a legendary philosophical problem representing the unification of the earthly and the celestial, the finite square base meeting the infinite perfection of the circle. This mathematical layer intersects perfectly with the pyramid's celestial alignments. The axis might be determined by the pole star, but the body of the monument is sculpted by eternal numbers. This multi-layered approach created a profound resonance. A visitor to such a space would experience it on multiple levels, consciously through the alignment of light on a sacred day, and subconsciously through the harmonious proportions that simply felt sacred, that echoed the deep structure of the world. By weaving this silent mathematics into masonry, the ancient builders made a breathtaking assertion. Their work was not an imposition on nature, but a conscious, reverent participation in its most fundamental laws. They were not just observers of the cosmos, they were composers, using stone and geometry to write their own hymns into the everlasting fabric of reality. This silent mathematics of shape and proportion was only half of the cosmic equation. To fully anchor their world to the heavens, ancient architects faced a more concrete and daunting task, establishing the 4 cardinal directions on the ground with absolute precision, long before the magnetic compass ever existed. One of the most technically demanding and globally shared feats was this pursuit of true north, south, east, and west. It was a fundamental act of imposing cosmic order onto the unpredictable landscape, a way to orient all human activity within a framework that mirrored the perfect geometry of the sky. But how do you find an invisible line like true north without a modern tool? The most elegant solution relied on humanity's oldest celestial partner, the sun. Picture a simple vertical rod, a gnomon, planted firmly in level ground. From sunrise to sunset, its tip casts a moving shadow. An observer would carefully mark the end point of that shadow at regular intervals throughout the day. These marks trace a graceful arc. Now, here is the ingenious part. The shortest shadow of the day occurs at local solar noon, when the sun is at its highest point, and that shortest shadow points directly north-south. But to get an even more accurate line, ancient surveyors would use the entire arc. They would take the 2 endpoints of the shadow's path, one from the morning and one from the afternoon, when the shadow was the same length. By drawing a chord between those 2 points and then bisecting that angle, they could establish a nearly perfect east-west line. A line drawn perpendicular to that east-west line gave them their true north-south meridian. This circle method, using nothing but a stick, patience, and a keen eye for symmetry, could yield astonishing accuracy, as modern experiments have repeatedly shown. Yet some cultures, driven by an obsession with perfection, refined this solar method to an even higher degree. The ancient Egyptians, as we glimpsed with the pyramids, turned to the fixed stars for ultimate precision. Their likely tool was the Merkit. By setting up 2 of these sighting devices in alignment and observing the meridian transit of 2 circumpolar stars, one as it rose and one as it set, they could triangulate the position of the unseen celestial North Pole. This stellar method locked their north-south line not to the sun's daily journey, but to the eternal pivot of the entire night sky, resulting in the breathtaking alignment we still measure at Giza. This drive for cardinality was not an Egyptian obsession alone, it was a global architectural language. In the American Southwest, the great kivas of the ancestral pueblones were often built as perfect circles, meticulously aligned to the cardinal directions, their floor features and entryways framing the four sacred quarters of the world. In ancient China, the concept of cosmic order was central to statecraft, and imperial cities like Beijing were laid out as perfect cardinally aligned grids, with temples and palaces positioned along a rigid north-south axis to harmonize human rule with the mandate of heaven. Perhaps one of the most intriguing examples lies in the vast metropolis of Teotihuacan in Mexico. Its central artery, the Street of the Dead, is not aligned to true north. Instead, it is offset by 15.5 degrees. For decades, this was seen as an error, a puzzling deviation from the global norm, but researchers now propose it was intentional. This specific alignment may have targeted the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster, a group of immense importance in Mesoamerican cosmology. What appears to be a mistake to our modern eyes was likely a deliberate choice to tether the city's primary axis to a specific, meaningful celestial event, blending cardinal order with stellar symbolism. The consistent, deliberate achievement of these alignments across continents speaks to something deeper than technical skill. It reveals a shared, profound human desire for terrestrial celestial symmetry. By laying out their most sacred spaces according to the same fundamental directions that ordered the cosmos, these cultures were doing more than building. They were declaring that human society itself was a reflection of universal law, that every wall, every street, and every temple doorway was a conscious participant in a grand geometric harmony written across the sky and etched permanently into the earth. The silent geometry of these monuments presents a modern challenge. How do we distinguish profound intention from mere coincidence? This is where the silent stones finally find their voice, through the meticulous work of a field called Archaeoastronomy. It is not a search for ancient mysteries with easy answers, but a rigorous fusion of science and history. Researchers in this discipline act as celestial detectives, bringing together the tools of archaeology, astronomy, anthropology, and precise measurement to test every claim. They do not simply gaze at a temple doorway and declare it aligned to the solstice sun. They return year after year with modern theodolites and sophisticated computer software to map the exact sightlines from specific observation points to specific horizon markers. Pioneers like Anthony Aveni have spent decades doing exactly this at Mesoamerican sites, patiently collecting data to separate genuine, culturally significant alignments from random chance or the seductive pull of modern romantic ideas. The core of their method is statistical analysis. If a culture built 100 temples and 5 of them point to the summer solstice sunrise, that could be random. But if 80 of them cluster around that same celestial event, the probability of that happening by accident plummets. This mathematical rigor moves the conversation beyond exciting one-off discoveries, like a single shaft of light in a chamber, and establishes broader, verifiable patterns of cultural practice. It reveals a society's astronomical priorities, showing us whether they were focused on the sun, the moon, Venus, or the stars as their primary celestial clock. Yet measuring the angle is only half the story. The true goal is to understand the why. For this, archaeoastronomers turn to the ethnographic record. They study colonial-era texts, recorded oral histories, and surviving indigenous knowledge systems. This cultural context is essential. It tells us that a temple aligned to the Pleiades was not just marking a star cluster, but was honoring the 7 sisters of profound mythic importance. It explains why a building faces west instead of east, connecting the alignment to specific deities or beliefs about the afterlife. This combination of hard data and cultural interpretation prevents a sterile, technical reading of the past. It ensures we see these alignments not as cold astronomical calculations, but as living parts of a people's worldview, their rituals, and their understanding of their place in the cosmos. This scientific approach naturally fuels healthy debate within the field. A perfect example is the Orion correlation theory for the Giza pyramids. The idea that the pyramids mirror Orion's belt is visually compelling and captures the public imagination. However, mainstream archaeoastronomy subjects it to intense scrutiny. Critics point to statistical analyses showing the match is not as precise as claimed, and that other star patterns could be proposed with equal validity. They question whether the symbolic connection is supported by any textual evidence from the Egyptians themselves. This debate is not a failure of the theory, but a demonstration of the field's strength. It showcases the necessary skepticism and methodological rigor that separates evidence-based understanding from speculation. By demanding multiple lines of proof, precise measurement, and cultural context, archaeoastronomy acts as our most reliable translator. It allows the grand, silent architecture of the past to speak again, not in whispers of mystery, but with the clear, empirical voice of human intellect. It reveals the ancient builders not as passive recipients of cosmic wisdom, but as active, brilliant scientists and philosophers, deliberately weaving the fabric of the sky into the enduring stone of their world. This rigorous scientific approach inevitably leads us into a swirling sea of speculation. The profound precision of ancient sites acts like a lightning rod, attracting countless alternative theories that seek to explain what seems inexplicable. These narratives range from intriguing to outlandish, suggesting everything from lost civilizations like Atlantis to direct intervention by ancient astronauts. While the desire for a grand, unifying answer is understandable, it is crucial to navigate this fringe with a discerning eye, one that respects genuine mystery without abandoning evidence. The central pitfall of many popular alternative theories is that they often, even unintentionally, rob ancient peoples of their own genius. Take the Great Pyramid. Its near-perfect alignment and massive scale are undeniable marvels, yet a common fringe narrative suggests it was built by a superior lost race using sonic levitation or other forgotten high technology. This story, while captivating, directly contradicts the overwhelming physical evidence. Archaeologists have found the workers' settlements, the quarries, the ramps, and the tools. We have administrative records on papyrus detailing the organization of labor and the delivery of materials. The pyramid's construction was a staggering, phased, human endeavor, a masterpiece of logistics and applied physics, not a magical event. To dismiss this evidence in favor of a myth is to dismiss the real, breathtaking achievement of the Egyptian people themselves. Another persistent idea is the concept of a global energy grid, where ancient monuments from Stonehenge to the pyramids are linked by invisible lines of earth energy, often called ley lines. Proponents map these lines across continents, connecting sites built thousands of years apart by cultures with no known contact. The problem here is one of selective data. With enough points on a map, you can always draw seemingly meaningful lines. Such theories often cherry-pick sites that fit the pattern while ignoring the hundreds that do not, and they typically overlook the vast differences in purpose, culture, and chronology between the monuments they connect. A temple built in Cambodia in the 12th century and a stone circle erected in England 3,000 years earlier are not parts of a single architect's plan. They are independent expressions of a shared human impulse to connect with the cosmos. This does not make the impulse less meaningful, it makes it more profound, a recurring theme in our species' story, not evidence of a single global secret. Engaging with these controversies responsibly does not mean ignoring the genuine, unanswered questions. How exactly were multi-ton stones transported and raised? What specific ritual knowledge was encoded in certain alignments? These are real mysteries that archaeologists and engineers continue to investigate using soil science, experimental reconstruction, and deeper cultural analysis. The key is to ground our exploration in the tools of legitimate inquiry, archaeology, physics, astronomy, and anthropology. by critically examining the fringe, we actually arrive at a more powerful appreciation. The real story, the evidence-based story, is that human beings, using careful observation, simple tools, and generations of shared knowledge, achieved these celestial feats. This truth requires no embellishment from lost continents or alien visitors. It tells us that our ancestors were brilliant observers, patient scientists, and profound philosophers who looked at the same sky we see today and dared to build a permanent reply in stone. That discernment protects the integrity of history, not by limiting wonder, but by anchoring it in a reality that is, in its own way, far more astonishing. The distinction between science and spirit is a modern invention, one that would have been utterly foreign to the minds behind these cosmic structures. To truly grasp why they went to such extraordinary lengths, we must step through a different doorway, one framed not by our logic, but by their living worldview. For these cultures, the sky was not a cold vacuum dotted with inert objects. It was a vibrant, populated realm, a celestial theater where gods walked, ancestors watched, and the great narratives of creation and destruction played out nightly. An alignment, therefore, was never just an engineering solution to a calendrical problem. It was a direct line to a deity, a way to participate in a divine drama, to harness a cosmic force, or to plead for a vital renewal. Take the Maya, master astronomers of Mesoamerica. To them, the brilliant planet Venus was not a point of light following orbital mechanics. It was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, a being of immense power associated with both life-giving rains and the chaos of warfare. The Maya meticulously tracked its complex 584-day cycle, believing its appearances and disappearances in the dawn or evening sky directly influenced the fate of kings and kingdoms. When they built the unusual round observatory at Chichen Itza, El Caracol, with its narrow windows targeting Venus's extreme positions, they were not merely building an observatory. They were constructing a listening post to a god, a strategic instrument to anticipate the moments of celestial favor or danger that would dictate the timing of royal ceremonies, agricultural rituals, and even military campaigns. The alignment was a form of cosmic diplomacy, a permanent architectural plea for advantage and understanding. This fusion of precise observation and profound mythology was the rule, not the exception. Cross the ocean to Neolithic Ireland, and we find the same integrated thinking carved into the earth. For the farming communities who built Newgrange over 5,000 years ago, the winter solstice was not an astronomical footnote. It was a moment of existential tension. The sun was at its weakest, the days at their shortest, the grip of cold and darkness at its most severe. The community's very survival depended on the sun's promised return. By engineering their great passage tomb to capture the year's first rejuvenating light deep within its darkest chamber, they performed a powerful act of sympathetic magic. They were not just marking the solstice, they were actively ensuring it. They were using architecture to participate in the sun's rebirth, to pull the light back into the world through a ritual set in immutable stone. In this worldview, the monument became a machine for sustaining cosmic and community life. It was a permanent ritual space that did not just host ceremonies, but was itself the ceremony, activated annually by the cosmos. This perspective fundamentally changes how we see these sites. To label Stonehenge merely an observatory or a calendar is to miss its heart. It was a cathedral under the open sky, a place where the community gathered to witness the reaffirmation of cosmic order at the solstice, to align their social and agricultural rhythms with the god's own schedule, and to feel, viscerally, their connection to a living universe. The stones were the interface. The scientific act of tracking the sun's extreme was inseparable from the sacred act of communing with a life-giving power. Understanding this dissolves the artificial barrier we place between the sacred and the scientific. For the ancient architect, the two were a single, unified discipline. The precision of the alignment guaranteed the efficacy of the ritual. The mathematical harmony of the proportions invited the presence of the divine. To build with such exactitude was an act of devotion, and to observe the celestial trigger was to complete a circuit of meaning between heaven and earth. These monuments were the ultimate hubs of intellectual and spiritual life, where astronomy, agriculture, governance, mythology, and community identity converged under the moving sky. They remind us that our drive to measure the cosmos may have begun not from a place of detached curiosity, but from a deep, poetic need to converse with it. The longevity of these celestial machines points to an even greater human achievement than the monuments themselves, the meticulous and sacred transfer of knowledge across lifetimes. A masterwork like the Great Pyramid was not the product of a single brilliant mind, but the culmination of a lineage, a chain of teachers and students stretching back for generations. This was not knowledge stored in public libraries, but a closely guarded treasure, the exclusive domain of a priestly and architectural elite who saw themselves as the stewards of cosmic order. In Egypt, this figure was embodied by someone like Imhotep, the legendary architect of the Step Pyramid, who was later deified as a god of wisdom. His modern equivalent would be a fusion of head scientist, chief engineer, and high priest. Training under such a master was a lifelong commitment. An apprentice would begin not with equations but with stories, learning the names and mythic journeys of the stars through oral recitation. He would spend years mastering the physical tools, the sighting rods, the merkits, and the knotted ropes, practicing on smaller projects before ever touching a royal tomb. This education likely took place within the secluded precincts of temples, turning these spaces into the world's first universities, where sacred science was passed from one initiated mind to the next. The resilience of this knowledge system lay in its multi-layered encoding. Technical data was woven into the very fabric of culture. Precise astronomical observations were safeguarded within mythic narratives. The story of Orion the Hunter was not just a tale, it was a celestial map and a theological doctrine about the afterlife, making it unforgettable. Building techniques and sacred proportions were embedded in rituals and repeated in art, ensuring that every time a ceremony was performed or a symbol was carved, the underlying principles were reinforced. This cultural insulation meant that even if a fire destroyed all the papyrus scrolls in a library, the core knowledge could survive in the oral tradition, the seasonal festivals, and the collective memory of the craftsman guilds. Standardization was another powerful tool for transmission. The royal cubit in Egypt was not just a unit of length, it was a divine measure, believed to be derived from the proportions of the earth itself. By decreeing its use across the kingdom, the pharaoh ensured that an architect in Thebes and a quarry foreman in Aswan were working from the same cosmic blueprint. Geometric templates for creating perfect right angles or harmonic proportions allowed teams separated by centuries to replicate the sacred forms that pleased the gods. Yet this system was not infallible. The very cosmos it sought to mirror was in slow, constant motion. The precession of the equinoxes, that 26,000-year wobble, meant that a star alignment perfect for a temple built in 1500 before Common Era would be noticeably off by 500 years later. We see evidence of this in some sites where later additions or rebuilt structures show slight deviations from the original, breathtaking alignments. Perhaps the knowledge of how to correct for precession was lost in a generational gap, or maybe the symbolic power of the original site outweighed the need for perfect precision. These subtle shifts are not signs of failure, but poignant reminders that this was a living tradition, subject to the same slow drift as the stars it tracked. The ultimate success of this generational project, however, speaks to a profound social contract. It required a stable society willing to invest immense resources in an educated class whose work yielded no immediate material reward, only cosmic harmony. These architect priests were the ultimate long-term thinkers. Their duty was not just to their current pharaoh or chieftain, but to the eternal balance of the universe, a duty they faithfully passed down like a sacred flame, ensuring that the conversation between earth and sky would never fall silent. That generational flame of knowledge was not confined to the Old World. Across the vast expanse of the Americas, from the arid canyons of the Southwest to the dense rainforests of the Yucatan, cultures developed their own breathtakingly unique languages of celestial alignment, each perfectly adapted to their landscape and their vision of the cosmos. Here, the connection between earth and sky was often more theatrical, a public spectacle of light and shadow designed to involve the entire community in the cosmic drama. In the high desert of what is now New Mexico, the ancestral Pueblones, sometimes called the Anasazi, mastered a form of astronomical art that required no moving parts. At Choco Canyon, they engineered a phenomenon now known as the sun dagger. High on Fajada Butte, 3 large stone slabs lean against a cliff face. On specific days, like the summer solstice, a slender dagger of sunlight pierces through a precise gap between these slabs, projecting a brilliant sliver of light that bisects the center of a spiral petroglyph carved into the rock behind it. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light perfectly bracket the same spiral. This was not a passive marking. It was a dynamic, interactive calendar, a moment of pure theater where the sun itself became an actor, its light performing a script written in stone and geometry for an audience that likely gathered to witness the confirmation of the seasonal turn. Far to the south, the Maya achieved a similar fusion of science and spectacle on a monumental scale. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo, dedicated to the feathered serpent god Kukulkan, is a masterpiece of encoded light. Its architecture is a precise solar calculator. The pyramid has 4 stairways, each with 91 steps, which, combined with the shared platform at the top, totals 365, the number of days in the solar year. But its most famous alignment occurs on the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the sun sets on these days, the stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows down the balustrade of the northern staircase. These interlocking shadows create the undulating illusion of a giant serpent slithering down from the temple to earth. This descending shadow of Kukulkan was a public miracle, a guaranteed celestial event that united astronomy, architecture, and state religion into a single, awe-inspiring moment. It demonstrated the king's privileged connection to the gods and turned the entire plaza into a participatory ritual space, where every citizen could witness the divine manifesting through engineered stone. In the soaring Andes, the Inca approach was one of profound integration with the natural world. Rather than building freestanding observatories, they often sculpted the existing landscape into a celestial instrument. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone, that elegantly carved granite pillar, is just one part of a larger system. The Inca carefully shaped natural rock outcrops and erected distant stone pillars on the surrounding mountain ridges to create precise sightlines. From the sacred rock within the city, an observer could watch the sun set behind a specific notch on the horizon during the solstices, or see the Pleiades star cluster rise over a certain peak. Their capital, Cusco, was said to be laid out in the shape of a puma, and from the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, 41 sect lines, or sacred sight lines, radiated out to hundreds of huacas, or sacred places, across the valley. These lines organized both space and time, dictating the ceremonial calendar and linking the city's core to the farthest reaches of its cosmological territory. From the sun daggers of Choco to the shadow serpents of Chichen Itza and the horizon pillars of the Andes, the Americas reveal a continent-wide ingenuity. These were not passive observatories, but interactive celestial theaters that transformed the abstract movement of the heavens into a tangible, community-wide experience. ensuring that the cosmic cycle was felt, seen, and celebrated by all. But the celestial clockwork has a deeper, slower rhythm, one that unfolds not over seasons or even generations, but over epochs. This is the precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000-year wobble in the Earth's axis. Imagine our planet as a spinning top that slowly traces a circle in the void. Over this vast cycle, the direction the axis points gradually shifts. This means the North Star changes, Theban for the ancient Egyptians, Polaris for us, and other stars in the future. It also means the backdrop of the stars against which the sun rises on the equinoxes slowly marches through the 12 constellations of the zodiac, completing one full circuit every 26 millennia. Detecting this staggeringly slow drift would be like trying to perceive the hour hand of a clock move with the naked eye. It is a change measured in arc seconds per year, a shift so subtle it would only become apparent after centuries of meticulous record-keeping. The profound question then arises, did any ancient astronomers perceive this grandest of all cosmic cycles? Some researchers believe they did, and they point not to blueprints or tools, but to stories. Across ancient cultures, we find recurring myths of a great year, a vast cycle of time encompassing the rise and fall of ages. Hindu cosmology speaks of 4 yugas, descending epochs of virtue that span millions of years before the cycle renews. The ancient Greeks wrote of a great year, a period after which the constellations and planets would return to their original positions, often associated with cataclysmic renewal. The Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, hints at cosmic cycles tied to the stars. Could these be cultural memories, mythic interpretations of that slow, celestial wobble they observed in their star charts over generations? One of the most controversial ideas links this cycle directly to stone. The Great Sphinx of Giza, with its leonine body, gazes due east. Some researchers, like Robert Bovell and Graham Hancock, have proposed a theory that the Sphinx was not merely built as a portrait of a pharaoh, but as a celestial marker. They suggest its alignment originally corresponded to the constellation Leo, rising on the vernal equinox around 10,500 years before Common Era, placing it in the age of Leo according to the precessional cycle. This would imply a knowledge of precession and a civilization capable of such construction far earlier than mainstream archaeology accepts. It is crucial to note this theory is widely disputed and rejected by most Egyptologists, who point to geological and archaeological evidence firmly dating the Sphinx to the Old Kingdom, thousands of years later. The debate itself, however, highlights the magnetic pull of the idea that ancients might have encoded this grand cycle in their most enduring monuments. More concrete evidence might lie not in stone but in clay. The Babylonians, obsessive record-keepers of the night sky, left behind thousands of cuneiform tablets detailing star positions and planetary movements over centuries. By comparing these observations, a patient scholar might have noticed that certain stars were very slowly drifting relative to the equinox points. The Greek astronomer Hipparchus is traditionally credited with discovering precession in the 2nd century before Common Era, possibly using these very Babylonian archives. It is plausible that earlier Mesopotamian skywatchers had noted the anomaly, even if they did not formulate a complete mechanical theory for it. Whether they grasped the astrophysics or not, the potential incorporation of such long-term cycles into myth and possibly architecture reveals a breathtaking scale of thought. It suggests that for these cultures, time was not just a linear march from birth to death, or even a simple agricultural cycle. It was a spiral, a grand, repeating narrative written in the slow dance of the stars. They perceived their place within a story far larger than any single human lifetime or dynasty, a story where civilizations themselves rose and fell within the turning of a cosmic wheel. This perspective transforms their monuments from markers of a king's reign into potential waypoints in a journey measured in millennia, a silent attempt to anchor human memory to the rhythm of the cosmos itself. Perfection was the goal, but it was not always the final result. The silent stones sometimes tell a different story, one of slight misalignments, puzzling angles, and monuments that do not quite point where we expect them to. These apparent failures and anomalies are not flaws in the ancient plan. They are vital clues, revealing a far more human and dynamic history than one of flawless celestial machines. Consider a temple whose grand entrance is oriented just a few degrees off from the summer solstice sunrise. To the modern eye, it looks like a mistake. But to an archaeoastronomer, this slight askewness opens a detective story. The first suspect is often the landscape itself. If a forest that once defined the horizon was cleared over centuries, or if a distant mountain ridge eroded, the visual anchor for that original alignment would vanish, leaving the stone axis pointing at an empty sky. The second suspect is time itself, in the form of precession. A temple perfectly aligned to a specific star's rising in the year 800 would be noticeably misaligned by the year 1200, as the slow wobble of the Earth's axis shifted the entire starfield. A community might continue using the site for generations, aware that the light no longer struck the altar quite right, yet bound to the sacred location by tradition. Sometimes the misalignment was entirely deliberate, a new ruler seeking to break from the past and establish a new religious order might deliberately build his temple on a different axis, symbolically turning his back on the old gods and their celestial patterns. In other cases, a defeat in battle or a period of hardship might be commemorated by a monument that intentionally faces away from the life-giving sun, a permanent architectural record of a dark time. Practical needs always weighed heavily. The ideal celestial line might run straight through an immovable bedrock outcrop or require building on unstable soil. Faced with this, the master builders would make a pragmatic choice, shifting the foundation a few degrees to sit on solid ground, prioritizing the structure's physical eternity over its perfect astronomical moment. Or they might need to align their new temple not just to the sun, but to a much older, pre-existing sacred spring or a revered ancestor's tomb, creating a complex web of terrestrial and celestial relationships where the sky was only one consideration. These anomalies pull back the curtain on the real world of ancient construction. They show us architects and priests negotiating between the ideal cosmic blueprint and the messy reality of geology, politics, and evolving belief. They were not infallible robots executing a divine program, but thoughtful humans making complex trade-offs. By studying these mismatches with modern tools, recalculating ancient skies, and examining the archaeological layers, we do not disprove their genius, we rediscover their humanity. We see a history written not in perfect alignments alone, but in the subtle adjustments, the compromises, and the occasional error that make their ultimate achievements all the more remarkable. These subtle misalignments reveal a timeless human dialogue between the ideal and the possible, a conversation that has never truly stopped. The deep impulse to connect our buildings to the cosmos did not vanish with the last stone circle or pyramid. It simply found new forms and new materials. The legacy of sacred alignment echoes powerfully in the architecture of our modern world, a continuous thread woven through centuries of changing styles and technologies. Look at the soaring Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe. Their architects, though guided by a different faith, pursued a similar celestial goal: liturgical light. They oriented these vast stone forests so that on the feast day of the saint to whom the cathedral was dedicated, the rising or setting sun would pour through the great stained glass rose window, flooding the nave with a kaleidoscope of divine-colored light. This was not solar alignment for agriculture, but for spiritual illumination, using the same cosmic mechanics to create an awe-inspiring experience that linked heaven and earth. Centuries later, an architect like Frank Lloyd Wright championed organic architecture, designing homes like falling water that seemed to grow from their landscape. This profound integration with a specific place, with its waterfalls, rock ledges, and forest canopy, mirrors the ancient principle of sacred geography, where a structure does not dominate a site but completes a conversation with it. The cosmic connection became a terrestrial one, honoring the genius of the local environment as a sacred entity in itself. Even our most pragmatic modern cities participate in this ancient tradition, often by accident. The phenomenon known as Stonehenge occurs twice a year when the setting sun aligns perfectly with the east-west street grid of New York City, flooding the concrete canyons with a radiant, horizontal light that stops traffic and fills sidewalks with photographers. While the grid was laid out for real estate convenience, not astronomy, the result is a stunning, unintended echo of solstitial alignment, proving that when we impose geometric order on the land, we inevitably create new relationships with the sky. More deliberate echoes persist. In St. Peter's Square at the Vatican, the ancient Egyptian obelisk at its center acts as a giant gnomon. On specific dates, its shadow falls along marked lines in the paving, a Renaissance-era nod to the solar calendar traditions of the past. Today, the principles are being rediscovered through the lens of science and sustainability. Biophilic design consciously uses sunlight patterns, not for ritual, but for human well-being and energy efficiency. Architects study the sun's path to maximize natural light, regulate temperature, and even support circadian rhythms, creating buildings that are fundamentally healthier because they are in tune with the solar cycle. This is a practical, evidence-based application of the oldest architectural wisdom. Our reach now extends beyond the horizon. Space agencies carefully calculate celestial alignments for launch windows, ensuring spacecraft follow efficient orbital pathways dictated by the gravitational music of the planets. The positioning of giant radio telescopes like the Allen Telescope Array considers the rotation of the Earth to sweep the sky, listening for whispers from the cosmos. In a profound full-circle moment, we are once again building instruments whose entire purpose is to align with the heavens, though now we seek not gods but understanding. This unbroken lineage from stone circles to space telescopes reveals something fundamental. The drive to orient our structures within a larger cosmic framework is not a relic of superstition. It is a timeless aspect of human design, a persistent blend of symbolism, utility, and a profound search for meaning. We build not just for shelter, but to situate ourselves in the universe, to create anchors of permanence against the turning sky, and to write our own chapter in the endless story of looking up. This silent dialogue between stone and sky is no longer locked in the past. We now possess a remarkable tool, a kind of digital time machine that allows us to witness the ancient heavens with our own eyes. Powerful astronomy software like Stellarium can rewind the night sky to any date in human history. With a few clicks, we can watch the stars of the Egyptian Old Kingdom wheel overhead, or see the exact constellation that rose behind the heel stone at Stonehenge on a summer solstice 4,500 years ago. This is not just a pretty simulation, it is a rigorous scientific instrument. Researchers can input the precise geographic coordinates and horizon profile of an ancient site, then run the celestial clock backward. They can overlay a three-dimensional model of the monument onto the simulated sky. Imagine watching the virtual moon, in its slow 18.6-year dance, rise perfectly between the specific trilithons of Stonehenge during a major lunar standstill in 2500 before Common Era. This digital test can confirm or refute an alignment hypothesis with a level of accuracy that ground-based observation, hampered by weather and modern light pollution, could never achieve. The technology extends beyond sight. In a field called archaeoacoustics, scientists use sound modeling software to explore how these spaces interacted with noise during celestial events. Take the hypogeum of Malta, an incredible subterranean temple carved from solid rock around 5,000 years ago. Certain chambers within it are known to create powerful acoustic resonances at specific sound frequencies. By modeling the space digitally, researchers can investigate whether rituals held during solstice sunrises, when light might have struck particular carvings, also used specific chants or drumbeats that the architecture itself would amplify into an overwhelming sensory experience. This fusion of light, sound, and stone reveals the monuments not as passive observatories, but as immersive ritual engines designed to engage every sense. The most profound leap comes with virtual and augmented reality. These tools can transport us from our living rooms directly into the heart of a cosmic machine. Wearing a headset, you could stand in the central chamber of Newgrange as the winter solstice sunbeam slowly inches its way toward you, feeling the scale of the passage and the awe of that engineered moment. You could experience the descending shadow of the feathered serpent at Chichen Itza from the perspective of a Maya citizen in the crowded plaza below. This shifts our understanding from intellectual to empathetic. We are no longer distant analysts measuring angles. We are temporary participants in a ceremony of light, gaining an intuitive feel for why these alignments held such transformative power. These digital tools are revolutionizing the field of archaeoastronomy. They turn intriguing speculation into testable, falsifiable models. They reveal alignments that have been erased by time, such as those to stars whose positions have drifted due to precession, or to horizon features that have been lost to erosion or deforestation. A temple doorway that now points at an empty hillside might, in the digital reconstruction, frame the brilliant rise of Sirius 2 millennia ago. Technology is painstakingly restoring the lost celestial context to these silent stones, allowing them to speak their full story again. It is a powerful reminder that our quest to understand these ancient architects is itself a form of alignment, a modern effort to bring our perspective into harmony with a vision of the cosmos written not in words, but in the enduring language of earth and sky. That digital time machine reveals the angles, but it cannot capture the feeling. There is a profound, almost primal, reason why standing in an aligned monument during a solstice still moves us deeply, centuries after its sacred purpose faded. It taps into something beyond history, a sense of cosmic belonging. In that moment of perfect alignment, when the sun's light obeys an ancient command written in stone, we are not just observers of a clever trick. We are momentarily plugged into a cycle far larger than ourselves, a rhythm measured in millennia, not minutes. This experience offers a rare and powerful perspective, a feeling of order and intentionality in a world that often feels chaotic and fragmented. It can evoke what psychologist Abraham Maslow described as a peak experience, a moment of transcendence where the boundary between the self and the world softens, replaced by a feeling of unity with something greater. The stones become a conduit not for a specific god, but for the sheer scale and intelligence of the cosmos itself. In our modern, digitally saturated lives, where time is a scrolling feed and nature is something we watch through a window, these sites offer a tangible, physical link to a different mode of existence. They connect us to a time when human life was intimately woven into the rhythms of sunrise and harvest, the turn of the seasons, and the patient wheel of the stars. This connection fulfills a deep-seated, often neglected need for ritual and for meaning that is anchored outside of human invention. We are reminded that we are not separate from nature, but participants in its grand, slow story. Furthermore, the sheer precision of these alignments inspires a unique form of awe directed at human potential. It quietly challenges the simplistic narrative of linear progress, the idea that older means simpler or less intelligent. Confronted with the Great Pyramid's orientation or the mathematical encoding of Angkor Wat, we are forced to recognize the profound sophistication of ancient minds. Their genius was not in microchips but in macro vision, in planning on timescales we can barely comprehend and executing with a patience that feels almost superhuman today. This enduring resonance, this blend of cosmic wonder and human admiration, is precisely why these places remain powerful pilgrimage sites. People do not visit Stonehenge at dawn on the solstice merely to check a box on a tourist itinerary. They go as seekers of wonder, to stand in the cold and wait for a light that has not failed in over 4,000 years. They are participating in the oldest human ritual of all, looking up and finding their place in the story. These monuments remind us that our dialogue with the cosmos did not begin with radio telescopes and will not end with them. It is an eternal conversation, and sometimes the most eloquent replies are written not in words but in silent, waiting stone. To truly solve the ancient puzzle, we must become intellectual weavers. The story is not told by a single thread, but by the careful intertwining of many. The precise angles measured by a surveyor's theodolite mean little without the star charts of an astronomer to show what those angles pointed toward centuries ago. Those celestial maps, in turn, gain meaning only when placed beside the pottery shards, burial sites, and construction layers uncovered by an archaeologist's trowel. And all of this physical evidence finds its voice through the creation myths, oral histories, and ritual texts preserved by anthropologists. This is interdisciplinary synthesis, the essential act of bringing scattered clues into a coherent picture. Consider the immense task of understanding Angkor Wat. To grasp why it faces west, you need the Hindu and Buddhist cosmology that shaped its design as a model of Mount Meru. To comprehend how they achieved such precision, you study the unique patterns of the tropical sky over Cambodia. To know why it was built at all, you delve into the political ambitions of King Suryavarman II and the geological reality of the sandstone quarries that supplied its blocks. Each field illuminates a different facet, and only together do they reveal the whole gem. This approach protects us from the trap of reductionism, the urge to label a monument with one simple function. A structure like Stonehenge was not just a calendar, it was not just a temple, it was not just a political statement of power. It was all these things simultaneously, a dense nexus where science, religion, governance, and community identity converged. Seeing it through only one lens is like describing a symphony by listening to just the violins. You get a true note, but you miss the harmony. This synthesis brings ancient texts to life in a new way. Take the Maya Dresden Codex, a bark paper book filled with intricate tables and deities. Viewed through a modern, separated mindset, it might be dismissed as mere astrology or mythology. But when an astronomer's analysis is combined with a linguist's translation and an archaeologist's knowledge of temple orientations, a stunning reality emerges. Those tables are a highly precise ephemeris, a mathematical manual predicting the complex cycles of Venus. This was not abstract stargazing. It was practical, sacred data that directly informed when to build, when to crown a king, and when to align a pyramid's doorway to greet the feathered serpent god in the dawn sky. The Codex was a celestial blueprint for architecture and statecraft. By weaving these disparate threads together, survey data, astronomical retrocalculation, archaeological context, and cultural narrative, we do more than solve an engineering mystery. We begin to appreciate the holistic nature of ancient thought. For the master builders, there was no bright line between the sacred and the scientific, between myth and mathematics, between a king's decree and a cosmic event. These were all parts of a single, integrated understanding of how the world worked. Our modern habit of separating knowledge into distinct disciplines would have seemed strange to them, a fragmentation of a beautiful whole. In honoring their complexity, we create a tapestry far richer than any single explanation could provide, one that finally allows the silent stones to speak in their full, multifaceted voice. The silent stones have shared their secrets, But the conversation is far from over. Our map of the ancient cosmic dialogue is poised for a dramatic expansion, thanks to a new generation of tools that act as technological time machines. One of the most revolutionary is LiDAR, or light detection and ranging. By firing laser pulses from an aircraft through dense jungle canopy, researchers can strip away the vegetation to reveal the ground beneath. In places like the jungles of Guatemala and Cambodia, this technology has already unveiled sprawling, hidden urban grids, road networks, and water management systems on a colossal scale. The next frontier is to analyze these vast, newly revealed city plans for astronomical intent. Were these entire urban landscapes not just individual temples laid out according to celestial principles? Did their main avenues align to solstice sunrises or mirror constellations across hundreds of square miles? LiDAR promises to shift our focus from single monuments to entire sacred geographies, showing us that the alignment of a civilization could be as grand as the alignment of a single stone. While LiDAR maps the surface, another cutting-edge technique allows us to see straight through solid Earth. This is muon tomography. Muons are subatomic particles like heavy electrons that constantly rain down from the atmosphere. They can pass through hundreds of feet of stone, but their path is slightly altered by dense voids or chambers. By placing sensitive muon detectors around a structure like the Great Pyramid or a large burial mound, scientists can create a three-dimensional density map, essentially an X-ray on a monumental scale. This technology has already hinted at a large, previously unknown void within the Great Pyramid. The profound question now is whether such hidden spaces, if they exist, were designed with an astronomical purpose. Could a sealed chamber be aligned to a specific star shaft, creating a perfect, private celestial observation point for a high priest? Or might it contain artifacts that explain the precise methods used for alignment itself? Muon tomography turns these massive structures from opaque mysteries into transparent puzzles, inviting us to look inside without moving a single stone. Our view of the past sky itself is also coming into sharper focus. Scientists are now reconstructing paleo skies, modeling not just the positions of stars, but the ancient atmosphere's clarity, the presence of volcanic dust, or the frequency of auroras. A star like Sirius, crucial to the Egyptians, might have shone with a more intense, flickering brilliance in a cleaner atmosphere, making its Heliacal rising an even more dramatic and urgent event. A major comet, its tail vividly visible for weeks, could have been interpreted as a divine message, prompting the construction of a monument to commemorate its path. By understanding the celestial stage as the ancients actually saw it, with its occasional dramas of meteor showers or supernova, we gain deeper insight into why a culture might choose to align a temple to one specific point of light over another. The sky of the past was not a static diagram but a dynamic, living theater, and we are just beginning to learn its full script. The search extends to landscapes now lost to the sea. As sea levels have risen since the last ice age, countless coastal sites where early humans might have built their first celestial markers now lie submerged. Advanced sonar and underwater archaeology are beginning to probe these forgotten shorelines. Could the foundations of a solstice-aligned stone circle lie off the coast of India or beneath the North Sea? Furthermore, satellite archaeology continues to find patterns invisible from the ground, revealing giant geoglyphs, ceremonial pathways, and geometric earthworks that only make sense from high above. Each new discovery adds another node to a growing global network, suggesting the impulse to build in harmony with the cosmos was even more widespread and creatively expressed than we ever imagined. The next decade of discovery holds the potential for a fundamental shift. We may move from studying exceptional sites to recognizing a near-universal practice, a foundational layer of human civilization. As these new keys unlock older doors, we are reminded that the past is not a closed book, but a living library. Every laser scan, every muon detector, and every satellite image brings us closer to hearing the full, whispered conversation between Earth and sky, a dialogue written in geometry, light, and an enduring human need to find our coordinates in the cosmos. Our fascination with these cosmic machines comes with a profound responsibility. The very act of gathering to witness a solstice sunrise at Stonehenge, or to watch the serpent shadow descend at Chichen Itza, places immense strain on the fragile stones and ancient foundations. Thousands of footsteps each year compact the earth, accelerate erosion, and introduce vibrations that, over time, threaten the structural integrity of monuments built to last millennia. This is the central paradox of modern interest. Our desire to experience these alignments firsthand can inadvertently hasten their physical decline. Conservation is a constant, delicate battle, balancing public access with the absolute necessity of preservation for future generations. Many sites now employ viewing platforms, restricted pathways, and timed ticketing, not to diminish the wonder, but to ensure the stones themselves survive the weight of our admiration. Yet the challenge extends far beyond physical wear and tear. For many cultures, these are not abandoned relics of a dead past, but living, breathing sacred spaces. Uluru in Australia is not merely a stunning geological formation with possible astronomical significance. It is a deeply sacred site to the Anangu people, woven into their creation stories known as Teotihuacan. The Black Hills of South Dakota are not just a landscape, they are the heart of the world for the Lakota, Cheyenne, and other native nations. To discuss the solstice alignment of a stone circle without acknowledging the ongoing spiritual connection of descendant communities is to tell only half the story, and often the less important half. This raises a crucial ethical line, the distinction between scientific investigation and cultural appropriation. For centuries, the study of ancient sites was dominated by external scholars who extracted artifacts and data, often viewing indigenous knowledge as folklore rather than a valid epistemological system. This approach treated sacred landscapes as puzzles to be solved, not as relatives to be honored. A new, essential model for archaeoastronomy is emerging, one built on collaboration and respect. This means involving indigenous scholars, elders, and knowledge keepers as equal partners from the very beginning of research. It means recognizing that their oral histories, songs, and ceremonial practices are not secondary sources, but primary texts that can unlock the deeper meaning of an alignment. It requires understanding that some knowledge is not meant for public dissemination, and that some sites may be too sacred for any external visitation. The future of understanding our cosmic past depends on this ethical shift. Our collective fascination must fuel not just exploration, but a commitment to stewardship and reciprocal relationships. It asks us to listen as much as we measure, to protect as fervently as we probe. The ultimate goal is to ensure these celestial conversations etched in stone endure not as museum pieces behind ropes, but as respected landmarks where science and spirit can walk together, allowing the wonder they inspire to be passed on, intact and reverent for all the generations yet to come. From the pinpoint accuracy of Giza to the shadow serpents of Chichen Itza, this quest reveals a story far greater than any single monument. It is the story of humanity itself, gazing upward from countless points on the globe and asking the same fundamental questions. Who are we, where do we belong, and how do we leave a mark that speaks to the timeless order we sense above us? The stones they left behind are their collective answer, a permanent reply etched into the very skin of the planet. We have walked the path of their methods, from the patient tracking of the sun's horizon dance to the generational recording of the moon's slow rhythm, and finally to the ambitious targeting of the fixed, eternal stars. We have seen the elegant simplicity of their tools, the gnomon and the plumb line, and the profound complexity of their sacred geometry, where numbers became a silent hymn to cosmic harmony. Most importantly, we have witnessed how these alignments were never cold calculations, but living threads woven into the fabric of culture, myth, and survival. They were calendars for the farmer, cathedrals for the priest, and instruments of statecraft for the king, all unified under the moving sky. These structures stand, therefore, not as evidence of outside intervention, but as the ultimate testament to human potential. They are monuments to the extraordinary ingenuity, the generational patience, and the cosmic vision of our ancestors. They challenge our modern assumptions about progress, asking us to reconsider what true sophistication looks like. It looks like planning on a millennial scale. It looks like uniting an entire society around a project whose full purpose might not be realized in a single lifetime. It looks up. This legacy invites us to do the same, to lift our eyes from our screens and see the sky not as an empty void, but as a historical archive, the original library where these ancient architects learned their craft. It is a source of wonder that has not dimmed. Every solstice sunrise, every equinox alignment is a chance to participate in that old, continuous conversation. As our technology advances from LiDAR to muon tomography, we gain ever more powerful lenses to decode their remaining secrets. But let us wield these tools with humility and deep respect, remembering that we are not just analyzing ruins, but engaging with the sacred work of countless generations who sought to build a bridge between earth and heaven. Their dialogue with the cosmos was masterfully engineered in stone. Our dialogue with their legacy continues, a shared journey of curiosity that connects us across the millennia. If this exploration of cosmic architecture has illuminated new connections for you, we would love to hear your reflections. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to continue delving into the world's greatest historical mysteries.